This was a long time ago. I was sitting in a science class studying a book containing various diagrams that the science teacher had asked us to examine. Despite being able to intently focus on the book, regardless of the ruckus of the classroom, I could never quite block out the noise of people talking. One trick I would use to help counter this is that I would tune in onto other people's conversations and listen to what they were saying, whilst I was reading and studying. This helps manage distractions and noise. Whilst reading, I overheard a conversation by the teaching assistant. A teaching assistant is somebody that goes around the room helping pupils one-on-one, although they might also be assigned to pupils with so-called special needs, like myself. Sometimes they would do both. In this case, she was having a social conversation with one of the disruptive female pupils. They were talking football. She regaled her with an older tale that she, a Scottish teaching assistant, who moved down to England from Scotland, had supported this obscure Scottish football club, and that, previously, she had told another pupil about it, and much to her surprise and delight, found out that the other pupil had heard of the team and supported it. I took a sort of half-assed note about it. It was football and wasn't of much interest to me. I did wonder what the probability would be of a Scottish teaching assistant supporting an obscure Scottish football team in England, finding another pupil, who I presume is non-Scottish, also supporting said football team. But this isn't where it gets weird. Several days later, on a Friday, and I remember it clearly as I had a weekend to ponder it, I was sitting in a history lesson along with the same Scottish teaching assistant. Now, as a teenager, I was rude and impulsive, and I regret being that kind of jerk, but this is probably one of the only times it paid off. The Scottish teacher started to regale the history teacher with the tale of the football club. I rolled my eyes. She'd already told this one. Back in the science lesson a few days earlier. I rudely interrupted and said, "She's already told this one before," I commented. Shocked, she looked at me. Why was she shocked? It was true. "No, I haven't," she remarked. I started to experience a sense of vertigo, like something had gone very horribly wrong. "You haven't?" I asked. "Nay," she said in her usual Scottish accent, and then angrily she pipped up. "But if you know the story so well, you can tell her." Still confused, but confident that I had heard it plain as day, and she was either losing her marbles in her old age or pulling a prank, I told the history teacher almost word for word what she told the pupil. The fact that she supported an obscure Scottish football club, and the fact that the first pupil she had told both heard of it and supported it. "And that's right," she pipped, but her voice got low and serious. "But I never told anybody." We looked at each other and she said, "Where did you hear it before?" "Science. The other day." I said we could ask the science teacher to verify. She overheard the conversation. We headed down to the science teacher as soon as the history lesson was over. I was confused. Was this an elaborate prank? I was going to make sure to keep tabs on both their faces to see if there were any tells that they were lying. But when we got down there, the science teacher said she had never told the story. Their faces told me that neither were lying. I was shocked. I said to the Scottish teaching assistant, "I don't know what to tell you. This is where I heard it." She replied, "I believe you. There'd be something weird going on." The week after, I even identified which pupil she spoke to, but even they said they never spoke with her. That same Friday, I was walking home. The weirdness of the day was already overwhelming. The vertigo was still there. You could only describe it as the kind of sensation you'd get if you got off after spinning around many, many times on a children's roundabout, but also were shook up. I was attempting to logically process this. I generally don't express emotions. When I saw a man working in a field and I had the most bizarre sense of intense murderous anger out of nowhere. What the hell was going on? I never get strong emotions for anything. I just ignored it and kept walking. Then, finally, I saw it. Whatever it was. I still remember the weather in the sky, the thick, dark gray clouds hanging low. The clouds had pulled back to reveal this silver object in the sky. It was silver gray, metallic, reflective, shiny, and it kind of looked like a bubbled egg shape. I was attempting to analyze it rationally. I thought maybe it was a children's toy blimp, one of those silver ones. It looked like part of the outer hull was spinning and going into the back tail section. What the hell? I wasn't ready for such weirdness. It must be a children's blimp. It angled up at a 45-degree angle stationary and just instantly accelerated to a high speed into the cloud, as if it had just realized it had been spotted and was fleeing the scene. What the heck? Was it observing me? Was it responsible for the weird stuff earlier? It was too high up to be a children's blimp, as high as the rain clouds. It angled itself unlike a children's blimp, as blimps don't point up, and moved too fast to be a children's blimp. They don't just shoot off. Everything I knew about aviation at the time, we don't have any aircrafts that work like that. I stared at this empty space dumbfounded. I did my best to memorize as many details as I could. I was someone who didn't think UFOs were even real before then. I had insisted time before that they were all explainable phenomena. When I tried to tell people, naturally nobody would believe me. And how could I prove it? I had no proof. I couldn't tell you exactly how high up it was, or how fast it went, but that day was the single weirdest day in my life. I've never quite had a day like it since. I wonder if it was somehow responsible for what happened at the school, but then, what did it do? Move me to an alternate timeline? Does this mean UFOs are some sort of time machines? And how did it do it without me noticing? Or what if, even more bizarrely, it is totally unconnected? And why did the sense of vertigo only happen after the teaching assistant told me she had never told the story before? Why even vertigo? I've hardly told anybody else about this story, on account of how weird it sounds, but your channel makes me feel that I should share it. Hopefully it gives someone else some insight. Back in 2013, we had a comet come close enough to Earth to be seen with the naked eye, ISON. I remember this specifically because I was a paranormal investigator back then, and had heard many stories about anomalies happening when comets came through the Earth's atmosphere. Our small team of investigators were on the lookout for interesting cases in our smallish town to investigate next, as we pretty much saturated the local well-known haunts. To my surprise, the anomalies that happened within a span of 2 weeks during this time did not come as a lead for a paranormal investigation, but as strange stories told to me by my friends and coworkers at the time. My friend, we can call her Mary, was up early on a weekday morning that had a fresh snowfall, one of the first that season, from the night before. Her husband was up even earlier and kissed her goodbye as he left for work in his pickup truck. Mary had her own car, which was parked in front of the garage. For context, Mary and her husband lived alone with their dog on a secluded property, surrounded by a forest in all directions. The only opening to get to their house is a long gravel driveway from the road. As soon as he left, Mary took the dog out, as she habitually did, and clipped on the long leash before hopping into the shower to get ready for work. She told me that she remembered stepping outside and hurrying because the snow was cold on her feet, but was still vigilant about properly attaching her dog, as he had a tendency to want to chase squirrels. He was a fairly large and protective dog, a boxer, and not friendly at all with strangers. When she got out of the shower, she hurried to bring the dog back in and put on her slippers this time. When she got outside, she saw the leash was lying on the ground, and in a panic, starting to yell for the dog and sprinting up the driveway in fear that he had gotten out to the road, where he could have been hit by a passing vehicle. She could not hear him barking or running. There was no sound at all. She started looking for paw prints where his leash reached. There was nothing. I asked her if she saw any footprints also, seeing as this was fresh snow and easily noticeable, but there were no footprints, she said. Only the tire tracks her husband left when he went to work. I also asked if there were 2 sets of tracks, in case he had reversed or come back for any reason while he was in the shower, and she said no. There was definitely only 1 set of tracks. As she walked back towards the house, her mind was racing as to what she should do next, when movement inside her vehicle caught her eye. She walked up to the garage and saw her dog sitting in the passenger seat, looking forward and happy as usual. She went to open the car door, but it was locked. She had to get the keys to open the door and bring the dog back inside. Within 2 weeks of Mary telling me her puzzling story, I was at work and heard a commotion in the hallway. A few men were looking for the owner of a silver Mazda, as it appeared that something had happened to it in the parking lot. My colleague, we'll call him Ryan, immediately jumped up and went with them to see what happened, as he did own a vehicle with that description. When he came back approximately 20 minutes later, Ryan came back with the most puzzled look on his face, in obvious disbelief. Approximately 3 hours earlier, Ryan had left for his 1-hour lunch to meet with his wife, who also worked downtown. They always met for lunch at this time. Ryan worked early and usually got a parking spot close to the building. But that morning, he had come in late and was exactly parked 3 rows down and not directly facing the door to the building, but several spots to the left. This was fairly far from the building. When he got back from lunch, he was happy to see the same parking spot was available. No one had taken it when he was gone, so he parked in the same place, finding it ironic. He had no way to explain what happened next. The men that came to our office, looking for the owner of the silver Mazda, were doing so because it had parked directly behind a car in the handicap zone, first row, directly in front of the door to the building. The Mazda was literally boxing that car in its handicapped spot, making it so it could not reverse at all without hitting the Mazda. No one parks like that unless they intend on boxing in the other vehicle. It didn't make any sense. Ryan got to his car and it was indeed locked, like he had remembered he left it, except it was way further and off to the left of where it was found. He then got in, and he realized it was in neutral. Another head-scratcher. One of the men theorized that maybe Ryan left it in neutral by accident when he got back from lunch, and it somehow rolled to the front of the lot, which could potentially be logical if there had been no other cars in the lot. But it was packed, and had been that way since 9 or 10 a.m. Ryan was well aware of this because he had been pleasantly surprised to see his same parking spot available when he got back from lunch. Otherwise, he would have had to have parked way in the back, at least 5 to 6 rows back from the front door of the building. This happened near the busy smoking section in the corner of the building, and Ryan and his friends asked if anyone had seen the car roll somehow that afternoon, but no one did. It was completely unexplained, just like Mary's dog in the passenger seat of her locked car. As a paranormal investigator, I clearly saw similarities between the events. Both involved vehicles, and a glitch in the location of it or related to it. Both were in daylight, in plain view. And there was a time proximity of the occurrences, within a 2-week time span. Nothing in the way of paranormal happenings was reported to us during that time, and the only coincidence I can think of is that it happened during the passing of the comet Ison. I have a friend who, for the purpose of this story, we will call Kay. I've known her for 20 plus years, and even lived with her briefly a couple of times. Her mother works at an iconic restaurant in our city, and has for almost the length of our friendship. Because of this fact, my friend and I were able to eat there for free whenever we liked. We didn't abuse this privilege, but we have naturally taken advantage a handful of times, and thoroughly enjoyed it. My friend and her mother didn't always see eye to eye over the years, and she was, and still is, a daddy's girl. Her father and mother, although never divorced, remained in a loveless marriage, barely acknowledging the existence of one another. They lived in the same house, however, so they remained committed to their marriage vows. This is all relevant to the story, I assure you. So, at some point, my friend gets pregnant. Roughly 2/3 into the pregnancy, her mother dies. She's oddly indifferent, but sad that her mother won't get to meet her grandchild and vice versa. When she got the news, she called me and I answered. "Hello." And she immediately said, "My mom died. My mom is dead." And I recall my initial thoughts being disappointment that we wouldn't get to eat for free at that restaurant anymore. I recall that because it was immediately followed by me feeling disgusted and horrified with myself for that being my initial thought. But thankful that those weren't the words that came out of my mouth. I'll tell you this right now. If you ever have such a thought as your reaction to a friend telling you that one of their parents has died, the feeling of disgust that follows is so overwhelming that it stays with you forever. It's not something you forget unless you're a certified sociopath. Fast forward to the following day, and I'm sitting in her house with my boyfriend at the time, who we'll refer to as Jay. We're discussing the fact that her father must feel mixed emotions regarding the passing of his estranged wife. We then move on to say that despite the fact that it will be so nice for him to finally be able to date, and hopefully find a more suitable partner. She then remarks that at least she, being an only child, will inherit her mother's car, which will help with the newborn baby-related tasks, and how the timing kind of worked out because her boyfriend had recently smashed up his vehicle after smashing up hers the year before. She then asks if I will attend the funeral with her, and I, of course, agree to do so. For whatever reason, I don't end up attending the funeral, and she goes with a mutual friend of ours instead. Soon after, she has her baby, and between the chaos of being a new mom and my relationship with Jay being tumultuous at best, along with the seclusionary joys of COVID, a year or so flies by without me so much as meeting the little one. Eventually, my boyfriend and I break up, and her baby is now old enough to toddle about, and COVID's ugly head has ceased to rear. I ask if she would like to hang out the following day, and she says that she would. I give her my address, and we plan a time frame in which she'll be by. The next day comes and goes, and she doesn't show up. That evening, I message her asking what happened, and she tells me that her day got away from her as the errands she had planned all took longer than expected, and before she knew it, she was already scheduled to return her mother's car. I, puzzled, ask to whom she had to return it, She says, "My mom?" I, having just damn near fallen off the couch, decide to call her directly, because this mode of communication is clearly broken. She picks up, and I have her repeat to me what she just said. She does. I sit in stunned silence for a moment, and then proceed to say, so, there's no other way to ask this, so I'll just ask it directly. Didn't your mother die? To which she says, "Huh?" And I respond with, "Your mother. She's dead. Pretty sure your mother died last year." She starts laughing and asks me what the hell I'm talking about. So I proceed to remind her about the conversation regarding her dad and how I was supposed to go with her, and how she went with her other friend instead, and so on. She goes, "Dude, I don't know what you're on, but my mom is very much alive. I just saw her a few hours ago, when I returned her car." I am beyond confused at this point. I apologize and excuse myself from the call. I then call my ex. He picks up and I say, "Hey, remember last year when Kay's mother died?" He says, "Yeah. You were supposed to go with her to the funeral, but didn't end up going." To which I reply with, "Yeah, well, that's probably for the best, because she never died." He then says, "No, she died. We sat around talking about how awesome it was that her dad was finally free, but a bummer that she didn't get to meet her grandchild." And I'm like, "Oh, I remember, but apparently none of that happened." He responds with, "I was sitting next to you when she called you and told you. Don't you remember? When the call was over, you told me that crappy thing you thought about the free food and how horrible you felt about it." To which I respond with, "Yeah, I remember, but I'm telling you, according to her, her mother is alive and well, and none of that ever happened." We sat in a kind of shared stupefied silence for a few moments, and then ended the call. She now has 3 kids. I've met a total of 0 of them. And her mom, still very much alive. Jay and I actually experienced a few, if not a handful, of timeline jumpings throughout our courtship. The only ones either of us ever experienced, in fact. Before or since. I have to assume that it's pretty rare to jump timelines and then jump back simultaneously with another person even once, let alone a number of times. In any case, this is just the craziest one. Hello. I've been reading all of your stories, and I think it's about time that I also share mine. I was honestly shocked when I found this sub. I really didn't think this was as common as it was. Every summer in South Spain, we celebrate Feria, which is like an outdoor party with bars built like boxes with no ceiling. So basically, everybody is around the fairgrounds, drinking, and going in and out to the bars to dance, grab some drinks, etc. It was around 3 a.m., completely nighttime, and me and my friend were outside the bars having a smoke. My friend suggested going in to take a drink and see if we could stay for a bit in that place, or go looking how the others are looking. Now this is when it becomes incredibly weird. My friend and I go inside the bar, all full with people dancing, and I mean the place is packed with people. We speak with the waiter and we order our drinks. We turn around, and the place is empty. We turn around again to the waiter, and they're also not there. No one is. We go outside, all shocked with our fresh drinks in hand, fresh ice. It was clear that the drink was just made at that moment, and not hours ago. We look around, and it's freaking daytime. We look at our phones, and it was 8 a.m. We turn around to the bar, and it's closed. There are workers cleaning the street. No one is around. Every bar was closed. Bear in mind that the bars close at 6, so it wouldn't have made sense that it was later than we thought, because the waiters would still have to clean the place before closing, and literally 1 second before all this, the bar was full of people and drinks on the floor. My friend remembers everything in the exact same way that I do, and we weren't drunk at all. I'm actually glad that I have a witness to this. I had taken a security officer position for the experience between jobs on a university campus. One building had woods around it, and had formerly been housing for priests who used to be teachers on campus. There was a desk for someone to sit at, a telephone, and then a little waiting room or reception area, and the front of this building had a large wide window and a glass door that was locked at night. The RA would sit at that 1950s style desk. The room had an old, circa 50s couch and chairs, end table and lamp like some old movie set. It was outside of our time. No one ever sat there. The students entered, then went through a door and into the individual small dorm rooms. This night, I was making rounds, driving the Jeep that belonged to the school, and I got a call from a very tearfully flustered RA. I was relatively close by and zoomed to her aid, humming the Mighty Mouse theme song. When I got there in a jiffy, I saw how terrified she was, sobbing, and she couldn't get her story out. The night was quiet, and she'd been in a student's dorm room helping her when she returned to her post at that front office area. She was startled to see an adult woman dressed in a skirt and blouse who had her hair up in a bun on her head, just sitting on the couch, reading something. She asked if she could help her, and she looked up into the RA's face, and then back down to the book again. She was older than the RA and seemed very sophisticated, so she kind of hesitated to push her. Was it a student's mother, maybe? She wondered. She thought maybe she didn't hear her, so she asked again. This time, she looked up from her book, stood, and then disappeared totally right in front of the RA. She was so shaken. She was a blubbering mess. I realized that she pretty much came with the 1950s and 60s style furniture, and was some kind of time warp or glitch. Hi, Raven. This one is a blast from the past. My parents weren't home one day and I had a couple of friends over. Thinking we were super cool, we would smoke cheap cigarettes without inhaling them out my window to keep the smell from ventilating through the house. I was sitting on my bed and I opened the pack to see 3. One for all of us. Like I said, we thought we were cool at the time and didn't realize how dumb we actually were. I distinctly remember seeing 3 individual cigarettes when we heard my mom come home. Nobody had lit their cigarettes, and I told them to hand them back and we'll save them for another time. I put mine back, friend 1 puts his back, and friend 2 handed me his but accidentally dropped it in the process. I looked down to see where it went, but it was nowhere to be found. My bed frame goes all the way to the floor, so it couldn't have fallen under it. I lifted my mattress to see if it got stuck between it and the frame, but nada. I told my friends to help me look for it, and they said that it must have fallen back into the pack. I opened the pack again, and there were only 2 cigarettes in it. I showed them, and they said, yeah, it fell back into the pack. I said that we each had a cigarette in our hands not 1 minute ago, and they were adamant that I didn't have one. I argued with them saying yes, I did. Why else would I give out my last cigarettes if I wasn't going to smoke one with you? I was so nervous that my mom would find a loose cigarette in my room at some point, but she never did. To this day, I have no idea what happened. I've known these guys 10 plus years and have brought it up to them a few times again, and each time they are adamant I didn't have one. I remember distinctly holding one with my lips, and I was about to light it when my mom came home. I'm still at a loss almost 15 years later. Does anybody have any theories as to what happened? My dad used to work in a car lot. He still does today, but he had a friend there who worked on the opposite side that my dad did. The lot that my dad works in is really old and has a lot of old folks in there, and one of them was this guy that we'll call Tony. Tony was a pretty old guy who had a lot of cool collections inside of his carrier. The car lot uses shipment carriers that you can buy/rent out for work, and one of them was this old 1922 Silver Liberty coin, which he gave me as a birthday present when I was 7. Fast forward a few years, and I start carrying the coin around with me as a sort of lucky charm. But then, one day as I'm cleaning my room, I pick up a jacket that the coin was inside. The coin then falls out of the jacket and onto the floor. Since it was a silver one, it made a pretty loud sound when it hit the floor, and my tenants and parents could both hear it. However, as it was doing the thing coins do on the ground when it's kind of swirling, I try to pick it up and it just vanishes. I look around my entire room and it is gone. After that day, I never saw the coin again, and neither did my dad ever see Tony show up at the car lot. Keep in mind that this was in later 2021. I'm talking November late, so right now before the coin would have turned 100. I don't know if the age has anything to do with it, but there is no way something that everyone heard drop, that I saw drop, would just vanish along with the guy who took it. Right? Okay, I'm telling this story on behalf of my ex. We're still on good terms as we have 3 kids together, and I have his permission to share, so here goes. This happened in the early 90s, when he was around 13 years old. He often ditched school, and in Scotland, most towns I know have a wooded area with trails and a bridge or two, usually with a stream running through, and for some reason, are always named the Glen by locals. The woods usually go on for a couple of miles, but nothing vast like a thick forest or anything. He lived close to the woods and knew them well. So one afternoon he was just exploring them while he should have been at school, when he came across what appeared to be an old disused water treatment site. He didn't know at the time that's what it was, but explains it just as you would imagine it would look like. 2 huge concrete circular objects, which would have been water tanks, jutting out of the ground, now covered with concrete, with moss growing on top. A few large and now corroded metal pipes coming out of the ground here and there, and a rectangular-shaped concrete area on the ground, which was probably the bases of buildings and such, scattered over quite a large area. And there was also a small abandoned brick outhouse with no door, which he went into, and within that an old electrics-type box with wires that were plain to see and had long been disconnected. He wondered, as he knew the woods so well, why had he never come across this before? So he spent some time exploring the area and just taking it all in before heading home. That night he spoke to one of his friends who often ditched school with him and asked if he wanted to go to the Glen the next day, and he would show him this new cool place he had found, and told him all about it. His friend agreed, and the next day off they went into the woods. Like I said, he knew the area well, so he knew where he had been the day before, and where the old waterworks were located, or at least, roughly where. except he could not find any trace of it at all. He said at this point that his friend probably thought that he had made it up. As they had hours to spare, they spent a lot of time looking for the area, except it was nowhere to be found. It was as though it just never existed. And like I say, the woods were big and dense in areas, but do not cover that big of an area in reality. He said that he felt really confused and disappointed, and swears 100% that it was there. I mean, it was a cool find, but it's not something worth making up. What young teenager would pretend to find objects that describe an old waterworks? If he was to invent something, it would definitely be something a bit more interesting. This memory stuck with him. How one day it was there, with him walking around it all, to the next day it's not existing at all. No traces of it. He'd never seen it before that day, nor did he ever see it again after. When the internet became a thing, he tried Googling it to prove he wasn't crazy. Plus, he was interested too. Except he couldn't find anything about it. No information at all. Like it simply did not exist. He asked his parents about it, and some others from the area, and no one ever knew what he was talking about. He didn't know what a waterworks even was back then, nor did he know what a glitch in the Matrix was, but he does now. My dad had a baby ring in 14-karat gold. It was something they used to do way back when. Even grown, my sister and I both wore it occasionally on our little finger as we have small hands. One night, I went downtown to a new little dangerous lounge. I went with my 2 male coworkers, Ricky and Charlie, and one of those guys drove. I'm female. The area was dangerous, but it was a new place, and we met for a Christmas party. We ate greasy little chicken wings and other bar delights, and a spotlight on our area was making my rings go crazy shiny. I took a mental note of what I'd worn and was careful with the napkins and greasy wings with my rings, so I wouldn't lose anything, and I noted 2 with diamonds, and my dad's baby ring on my little finger. I saw it clearly. Before I left, and I had not been to the bathroom, I saw that my dad's ring was gone. I alerted my friends and we looked under the table, restrooms, though I didn't go there. I had to leave eventually and was so sad. It had completely ruined my night. I prayed every day and night that some way I could find it. I'd lost a girlfriend of mine not long before, and thought surely she was a saint in heaven and sent a little request that she prayed with me for a return of that ring. Time passed. One day I saw a cigar band style initial ring like that one in a jewelry store, so I put it on a long layaway. After I had done this, I had a dream of my friend and she said, "Before the last layaway payment, you will find your father's ring." It was about 6 weeks later, and it was payday. I paid the second to last payment that day. I went over to my sister's house and helped her empty a small closet of way too many shoes and that she wanted none of. So there was no going through them, and I simply threw them into a wide open black trash bag, one after the other, until they were gone. I cinched the bag, and I plopped them into the dumpster. I returned with a wad of wet and dry paper towels and swiped the narrow closet wet again, and then dried it well and threw those towels out. I went to now close the door, and I heard a clink. There sat that ring on the closet floor. It was impossible. I then thought of her words in my dream. "Before the last layaway payment, you will find the ring." It was that day, the second to last one. On the last one, I told the jeweler to change the initials to mine, as I had the original back. Okay, so you tell me, glitch or just really strong premonition? This happened in the summer of 2000. The night before I was supposed to have my senior portraits made, so it's very vivid still, because it was the most crazy thing I have ever experienced. I will say that I have always had really strong premonitions about things. I just chalked it up to being an observant person. Anyway, my mother was away, caring for an aunt with cancer. My dad and brother had both worked outside that day, and had horrible allergies, so they took Benadryl and were out. Nobody to talk to about how I was feeling, so I called my mother. It was around 10 p.m., but I called anyway, and she answered. I told her, "Mom, I cannot go to sleep, because if I go to sleep right now, I'm not going to wake up." She asked for clarification, but all I could tell her for sure was, if I fall asleep in my bed right now, I'm going to die tonight. I can just feel it. She chalked it up to being nervous. Sick aunt, mom gone a lot, really bad breakup the Christmas before that kept me a mess since he would never really just go away. She told me to stretch out on the sofa and to sleep there. So I made my spot on the sofa. About an hour and a half later, I started feeling silly, so I grabbed my pillow and went to my bed. I barely dozed off when I was awoken by what sounded like rushing water, and then my window bursting in. That's when I saw the smoke and flames. The house next door had caught fire, and was fully engulfed, and because the houses were so close, ours caught. I got us out. I got fire and police there. I even had to have an officer get my car out of my parking spot, because as I pushed the brakes to put it into the gears, the brake pads melted to the tires. He did get it free. The only part of our house that caught fire was my bedroom. My dad called my mother to tell her what had happened, and she screamed for him to hand me the phone. She asked, "How the hell did you know what was going to happen?" I didn't. I just had the strongest feeling that I cannot explain. Going into a deep sleep in my bed at that time meant that I would never wake up. My bed was against the windows, and the charred ceiling was on what was left of my bed. To this day, she says it's the strangest phone call she's ever gotten from me, and I still cannot explain how I knew that my room was not safe that night. I just know that if I had gone to bed, I would have been killed in that house fire. Instead, we all got out safely, and insurance fixed the damage to my room. In the end, it was a bad try at insurance fraud by the neighbor who lit candles all over his house, let all the cats in the room with the candles, and then left the house. So the neighbor was fine. A horrible human, but fine. I posted this on the Glitch in the Matrix sub, and it was removed for having no witnesses, despite having my mother and the phone calls, the entire police and fire department, my dad and brother who were in the house when I woke them to get us out. Somewhere my parents even have video of the damage for the insurance company. The fact that it was removed so quickly when so many other stories actually have zero witnesses makes me feel even more odd about sharing this story. But it's bothered me forever. So, glitch, or just a gut feeling? I'll try my best to keep this as short as I can while remaining coherent about it. When I was young, my grandma always called me Mizpa, as a nickname. Being young, I never thought much of it, especially what it even meant in the first place. I ended up losing her in a tragic way at the age of 17, which affected my life in a negative way for a good amount of time. I was never necessarily religious, or even spiritual for that matter, but after her passing, I begged for a sign for the longest time, to no avail. Fast forward. I've never been good with people romantically. Like, ever. Never really been in a real relationship, or experienced any true deep connection with anyone, up until around September of 2023. This girl got hired at my work. How I even ended up at this store in this state is, in and of itself, a story with many synchronicities. And I was tasked with training her. We hit it off incredibly well and very fast. And while we never dated because she technically has a boyfriend, over the span of 7 months we grew insanely close to one another, to the point where we were nearly inseparable. And despite her being in a relationship, long distance mind you, never met each other, there's a very real chemistry between us. So, what do these two parts have to do with one another? Well, just over 2 months ago, I was at her house and we were watching some random YouTube series about the paranormal, which in part dealt with communicating with dead loved ones. Halfway through the episode, I paused it and decided to finally come around in being open with her about what exactly happened with my grandma. And part of that was telling her how I begged for a sign for the longest time, but never received one. But in hindsight, I'm happy I didn't, because I probably wouldn't have been able to handle it. But if I were to receive a sign now, I think I would be at peace with it. I then resumed the episode. After the episode ended, I started to bring up my grandma once again, and as I did, my phone started to ring. Who was calling? My grandma's old phone number. I actually instantly broke down about it because I had never experienced anything paranormal ever before. I didn't answer the phone because I was too shocked, honestly. I let it ring, and then after composing myself, called back, and some random guy answered, saying that he didn't make any calls and that he was just on his way to grab groceries from the store. That was that. I told her, and another friend more recently, that I feel like that was my grandma's way of saying she was watching over us. It gets weirder. Fast forward to Easter of this year. Due to some stupid situation taken out of context the day before, me and this girl had a falling out. We haven't seen each other since, and have only argumentatively spoken like twice. Aside from that, I've just been focusing on myself, as one is supposed to in these situations. Well, a few days ago, I had the urge to treat myself. I've always wanted to own a piece of jewelry, but something antique. Something from Victorian times. Within a short amount of time, on Etsy, I found a sterling silver ring with a single word imprinted on it. Mispa. After laughing at the no way feeling about it, I had to finally see what the word meant after all this time. It's a Hebrew word that means watch over. It became popularized during the Victorian period, wherein couples would gift each other rings with this word to keep them safe while they were apart from each other. I've experienced a good amount of synchronicities with this girl, but this one is borderline haunting. A little extra crazy thing about the ring that I found too, and I did end up buying it, is that the maker's mark is B and B, which coincides with the initials of this girl's and I's surnames. The other day, May 16th, 2024, my earplugs went missing thanks to my cat Lola, and me placing them on the edge of my nightstand. Scouring the room, looking top to bottom in every crevice, pillow, I shook the pillowcases, looked under the beds, in the Rice Krispie Treats box, behind the computer. The point is, I looked everywhere. The earplugs I use are the Max for Kids orange plugs, because the adult ones are too large and practically wax your ear if it's too long. Due to the worry of toxicity, I was adamant to find them, while also being upset that Lola knocked them off. Interestingly enough, while searching, I found a mysterious single earplug hiding in my yoga mat. How the hell that got there, I'll never know. I think it was the precursor to what happened next. I was sleeping, producing Z's in my Zzz factory, tossing and turning like a hurricane as I usually do, when suddenly I felt something at the left edge of my pillow. It woke me up, actually. I'm a super sensitive sleeper, hence the earplugs and sleep mask. And there they were, the earplugs, gently pressed together in the exact middle of the edge of the pillow. Again, I shook the pillowcase and nothing came out. So I suspect this was a glitch. Or perhaps something was protecting the cats, placing it there knowing how concerned I was if any of them had found or eaten or chewed on them. I've had a pretty paranormal life, to the point that I watched a bird disappear in a house, so this is nothing new to me. If you want to hear that story and the rest from that hell house, let me know. I'll send them in. As a matter of fact, Josh, I would love if you would send those in, because those are definitely, they sound interesting is what I'm trying to say. Please do. So, I want to start this off with, I do not vape. I have never smoked, vaped, or anything. I tried smoking back when I was a teenager. I didn't like it, and I never picked it up. But now, I own 3 vapes, and the last one is the one that has me shocked. So I had a coworker at my last job that, when we met, she didn't vape. She, besides me, has been in my car the most. I gave her rides home, and then near the end of her time working with me, took her to and from work. I won't lie, those are the days that I miss, that and having lunch with her. We talked a lot, but that's not the glitch. Vape 1, the blue vape. This one's not a glitch at all. She asked me to take it from her. It was this blue, one-time use. It was almost dead, but she just didn't want to be tempted with it, so I took it from her, and that was that. Vape number 2, this one is a glitch, maybe. She had started hanging out with an old friend who got her back into vaping, and to be fair, she was stressed out. She vaped in high school, but had stopped when we met, and it was only when she started to hang out with this friend that she started to vape, which, I mean, does happen. We talked over lunches and stuff about her wanting to quit. So she had a vacation coming up, and she said during that she and her friends were going to quit. Her friend didn't, but she did. Well, early on, she had a super stressful week, and we had agreed that I wouldn't let her vape. So I took it from her. I had a windshield cover on my floor in my back seat, and I put it in there. I remember this because I thought, it'll be hard to see in the black and she won't find it. Well, that day got worse, and she begged me for the vape. I gave in, because she was really not okay. I went to grab it, and it wasn't in the cover. She checks under the seat. Nothing. I looked through the cover fully, and we never found it. We searched for it, off and on, for about a month until we said that my car ate it. Well, she has left that job, and so have I. This was 6 months to a year later. I cleaned that car fully, and on the back seat, plain as day, under a windshield washer fluid bottle, is her black vape. My seats are gray, and it didn't blend in that great. I had looked on the back seat a few times in our looking because I was planning to give it back to her so she could sell it. I picked up the vape, looking at it, very confused. I took a photo and we both laughed our back ends off. She was so happy that it went missing in the end. She hasn't started it back up, and I'm very proud of her for that. If you're hearing this, girl, you're awesome, and I'm so happy that me and my car could help you kick it. That is all the vapes that I knew of in my car. The 2 sitting in my driver's side cove thing. But now I have 3. So, let me tell you about the one that is 100% a glitch. Vape 3, how the hell did I get you? So, this Saturday, I'm driving home from work. I bought this dashboard phone holder, and these little rubber holders fell off. One flew at my leg, and I'm looking for it on the seat, between the seats, and then I think maybe it's in the e-brake area. So I sigh and reach in past the weird, hard wire stuff, so things can't fall in there. But this car is old, and stuff does get in there. I feel this really big, odd thing. It's not the rubber thing at all. I carefully grab it and pull it out, and here is vape number 3. It's a mermaid look and color. My coworker never had this vape that I can recall. I took a photo and she said maybe it was hers, but she doesn't think so. And I don't think it is. She mostly had the black one, but either way, she only ever lost the black one. I also am the second owner of this car, more like third, but either way, I have dug in there many times just to make sure it's clear. Because it's my e-brake, and you never know, and I do know that stuff has fallen in there. I'm not one to give rides to others all that much. I can name 5 people that have been in my car, and the only one that vaped or smoked, besides the original owner, was my coworker. And I've put my hand in that e-brake thing a few times. The only thing I can think is maybe a mechanic dropped it, but my car hasn't been in the shop for months, and I'm sure that I checked that e-brake since then. Also, the mechanic I go to are all men, and this is for sure a female vape. Let's start with the backstory. In February of 2019, I was in a bad car accident. My Tacoma was totaled as I went through a yellow light, and someone turned in front of me. I swerved out of the way and they hit the bed of my truck at a weird angle. My truck smashed into the light post on 52nd Street and McDowell, on the border where Scottsdale meets Phoenix. Like any car accident, it happened so fast and so unexpectedly. I was extremely fortunate to walk away from this accident with no major injuries, although I was shook up a bit and did have some whiplash. My truck looked like a grenade went off in it. Still, to this day, I have no idea how I survived. I thought I had died for a second as I remembered a weird sense of euphoria and then heard an insane buzzing, almost like a freight train. However, to my surprise, when I came to, I looked in my rearview mirror to see that I was alive, and was able to get myself out of the truck to check on the other driver. Fast forward a couple of days, and I was spending a lot of time alone at my apartment, with no vehicle, as I dealt with the insurance formalities, and I took that week off of work. Everything felt very off for this entire week. I chalked this all up to a haze and maybe even a slight concussion from the accident, even though I know I remember the exact events that just weren't quite adding up. A week or so had passed. I finally got a rental car and I was getting the urge to get out of the house. I ran a few errands, took my dog to the park, and visited a couple family members who were a bit concerned with me since the accident, since I had kind of gone dark for a week or so since the accident. Later in the day, I picked up my uncle, who was only 3 years older than me, and basically like an older brother so that we could go out and grab a bite to eat. We stopped at Circle K since I had driven all over town at that point and needed some gas. I parked at the pump, and I sent a text as my uncle walked in before me. I was walking to the door, and as I got to the curb approaching the door, an elderly woman drove up in a beat-up white car, and she parked at the handicapped sign. She got out of her car right about as I was nearing opening the door for myself. I noticed she was moving a bit labored, and I vividly remember getting a weird sensation, and had a strange internal monologue that was essentially like, "Hey dude, you can be a dick and walk in and get gas, or you can wait 15 seconds for this elderly overweight woman and hold the door for her." I waited and held the door. She didn't break eye contact with me as she walked by. I'm prone to getting the goosebumps pretty easy, and for whatever reason, the look she gave me had the hair on my arms standing up. She didn't say thank you. She just stared at me. It wasn't an intimidating look, more just hyper-analyzing me. I thought it was pretty weird, but who am I to judge? Circle K tends to attract some strange characters, so I didn't think too much of it. She walked right into the cashier. My uncle was now standing in line paying for his soda. He paid and stood directly to the side as he waited for me to put 20 on pump 3. The woman now approached the cashier and ordered one scratcher ticket. Random, and I didn't think a thing of it. She turned and slowly started making her way towards the door. As she turned to walk away, I dropped the 20 on the counter and said, 20 on pump 3, please. She turned around in sheer confusion and astonishment as she looked into my eyes with her jaw on the floor. She was in complete awe and she looked right at the cashier and said, I thought Logan just said that. You nailed it. That is my name. The cashier was now extremely confused. He literally just said, What? Who said what now? Again, as clear as day, she said, I thought Logan just said that. And he said, I don't know who Logan is. I looked at my uncle with complete astonishment. He was as confused as I was, and we were both speechless. She started again towards the door, and I looked at the cashier. All he did was shrug his shoulder and shake his head in a bit of confusion. I can imagine he's seen all kinds of weird stuff, and he had no clue that was my name. I looked back at my uncle, who was still frozen with confusion. I knew that I needed answers. At this point, the woman was approaching the door to leave. I ran to the door and opened it for her again and said, Ma'am, that name you just mentioned? You said you thought that someone had said something. What was the name you referenced? She looked at me with pure confusion and said, What are you talking about? I replied, At the register, you said that you thought someone had said something. What was the name that you referenced? You said you thought you heard someone say something. She put her hand on my shoulder and just said, Sweetie, we've never spoken before, and just walked into her beat-up white car and drove off. I still have no clue what happened. I'm just thankful my uncle was there to witness this, because I don't think I'd even believe it myself if he wasn't there to confirm that this took place. Any ideas? I obviously have zero clues if my accident has anything to do with this. It's highly unlikely that it does, but it does feel odd that this week or two following the accident, I was extremely out of it, and in a haze, and then something this bizarre takes place. Twice in my life, I've seen some sort of spark that I can't explain. It might be two unrelated events, but I'll share them both anyway, since they aren't very long stories. The first was around age 8. I walked into the bathroom, and for a split second, the right side of my vision was filled with brilliant neon blue. There was no sound or other strange effects, and nowhere it could have come from. My parents' best guess was that I'd somehow seen the blue clothesline out the window. But this was as if it were an inch from my face. The only other explanation I can think of is that something like a laser pointer hit me, but this was in the early 90s when such bright blue lasers weren't available to the general public. Anyway, there's also a mile of forest between that window and the nearest road or house, so the only place such a laser could have come from is the sky. The second time was around age 15. I was repairing a clock radio which had a built-in light, on which one of the wires had broken off. I had opened it up on the kitchen counter, the only available workspace at the time, and heated the solder joint to install a replacement wire. As soon as the wire touched the solder joint, there was a bright white flash from the other end of the wire. This wasn't a simple electric spark, though. For one, it looked completely different, more like the end of a sparkler. It was much, much brighter than any electric spark you'd get from a household outlet. It also made no sound or smell, and it lasted only, I would estimate, a millisecond at most. The strangest part is, I can't think of how this spark was created. The clock wasn't plugged in, and had no battery. The area that I was working in wasn't near any capacitors that might have held a charge. The other end of the wire, where the spark actually came from, was just sticking up in the air. If it had been a normal electric spark, it should have been at the point where the wire touched the circuit, not at the other end connected to nothing. This only happened once. Touching the wire to it again didn't yield any more sparks. The light circuit was completely fried, though. No visible damage, but it just didn't work at all when previously it had worked fine if I touched the wires together. I've done countless hobbyist electronic tinkering in the 20 years since, and I've never seen anything like this again. I know it sounds like I just made a mistake, but electricity just doesn't behave that way. This is a true account of a teleporting knife. This was a special knife. It was my pocket knife. A very beloved pocket knife that was used frequently on a daily basis for utilitarian reasons, during my day-to-day operations. It belonged in my pocket as much as my wallet, keys, and change. I used it often in my line of work, which is putting in water lines. It was just the right size and usefulness that made it one of my favorite pocket knives ever. The knife was being used one day as usual, but was accidentally left in the muddy ground. I had not realized it was left on the ground until after coming home. I was laying in bed and realized I'd forgotten my pocket knife at work that day. I had used it to clean my excavator tractor tracks, and then I stuck it in the ground. That evening I remembered that I had not retrieved it, and the realization that it was still on the ground was disheartening. To make matters worse, I also remembered that I had even unknowingly ran over that area with the tractor, burying it deeper in the mud. I knew that evening after my recollections of the day that my beloved knife was forever gone. I was truly saddened by the fact of my negligence and wished that I had it back. I went to sleep, upset by my mistake. The next morning, my wife came into the bedroom with coffee and a question. To my surprise, she asked me why there was a muddy opened knife on the countertop, which was not there the night before. My wife had no idea that I had went to sleep saddened with the knowledge of the loss of my beloved knife. When I went to see what it was that she was asking about, I could not believe that it was actually my very knife. The very one that I know I left underneath the ground. But there it was, covered in mud, just as I had left it. Except on the countertop. I never carry an open pocket knife. I always clean it and close it before putting it back in my pocket. I remember it was in the ground. No one brought it back, so how did it get on my counter? I have to wonder if a loving presence, possibly my recently departed dad, somehow brought me back my beloved knife that was at least 6 miles away and underground. I still have the knife and am very thankful to say that it continues to still get used daily. So, I've been listening to your stories lately and absolutely love this kind of stuff. It's fun and fascinating, especially since I'm no stranger to weird paranormal happenings for most of my life. And we've experienced a bit of paranormal stuff in this current house. I'm not sure whether to chalk this up to paranormal, glitch, or something else, but all the same, it's weird. This is a strange thing that happened to my 14-year-old daughter just recently. She had received a pair of jeans for Christmas this year from her grandma, and she really liked them. And she had worn them several times before this incident. All of a sudden, one day, she can't find them. So she turns the house upside down for 2 months. Over and over again. Determined that they must be somewhere because where else could they be? And my house is not the cluttery type either, so it's relatively easy to find stuff. Now here's where things get odd. She walks into our TV room the other day, and there my puppy is in the middle of the room chewing on the top of the jeans. What the hell? I keep thinking that she must have dropped them under the couch, or something, but she swears she took the couch apart and left no rock unturned in our house, several times over. My puppy won't climb the stairs in our house either. They're tall and narrow and freak him out, even if you try to assist him. You would hear him if he tried. He's big and still kind of clumsy, so he couldn't have got them from upstairs in a bedroom or laundry room. My husband and other daughters swear they haven't seen or borrowed them. And, like I said, my house is quite tidy and organized, so there really isn't anywhere for things to hide. And a pair of jeans for a 14-year-old are not exactly a small item either. But, honestly, it's not the first item in our house to mysteriously disappear into thin air, so I'm not entirely surprised. It sure does make me scratch my head, though. Last week, I was out in my backyard. I live on about 10 acres, but I was only about 100 feet from my home. I usually go for a short walk every day down the same trail with our dogs. I had walked this same trail every day for the last week. Off to one side of the trail, I noticed a recently dead deer. It wasn't there the day before. Very obviously not there the day before, as I had to stop my dogs from engaging with it. This, in and of itself, is not odd. I live in the woods, and animals die. It happens. I didn't give it much of a thought. I am an avid hunter, and I can identify the state of decay of animals pretty easily. I should also add that I'm literally a scientist. Like, my degrees are biology and medicine. I'm quite pragmatic, and I can usually remain objective. Science explains a lot. Anyways, this was just mildly interesting. I went back the next morning to snap a pic to share with my dad. Overnight, the deer had deteriorated severely. Again, I could explain this mostly. Temps were rising, and it had increased from about 38 Fahrenheit to 44 Fahrenheit overnight. There are coyotes here, so perhaps that explained it. However, what I could not explain was the fact that a pair of rather expensive custom sunglasses that I had lost 6 years ago were sitting neatly, undamaged, next to the deer's hind quarters. They are brightly colored. Had these been there the day before, I would have noticed them as they are so obvious. I left them in place, went to get my wife, and showed her the deer without mentioning the glasses. She saw the deer, and in a moment her face went pale, and she scanned and saw the glasses. Her response was, "Are you messing with me?" No. So we brought my sunglasses home and tried to work it out. Maybe melting snow had moved them from the woods? Could I remember having lost them in the woods? No. Snow had been gone well over a week, and I'm 90% sure that I lost the glasses on a fishing trip far from here. It was evening by that time, so the next day on my walk back on the trail, my wife came with me to see if there were any other signs of something that could explain this. Upon arriving at the deer, we noticed something yellow about the size of $50 sitting in the exact same spot my glasses had been. Not close to the spot, in the exact spot. It was a croc gibbet that my daughter had lost, presumably at school. At the latest, this was lost in October of 2021, according to my daughter, about 2.5 years ago at the very least. There is no way that I would have missed this item. I would have had to touch it when I picked up the glasses. My wife was also a second set of eyes in place that would have seen it. It is also of note that upon this visit, the formerly freshly dead deer was almost nothing more than a skeleton with some errant hair here and there, as if it had been in place maybe 6 months. The flesh was almost entirely gone, just some dried strands here and there. Bottom line is, over the course of 3 days, this deer went from appearing to be dead for maybe 12 hours to a skeleton, and a missing pair of sunglasses and a shoe decoration showed up in the exact same spot. When I was 16, in 2004, my family visited my aunt and uncle with their kids in Buffalo, New York. After a few days, we headed to Eden, New York, where my grandfather had a cottage. Even though he passed away when I was young, we always called it Grandpa's cottage, because he'd built it with his own 2 hands. My aunt inherited it because she lived close by while we were from New Jersey. My grandma had died of lung cancer before I was born, and both of my grandparents had their ashes spread on the cottage property. The cottage was nestled on about 80 acres of woods, dotted with small fish ponds and open fields. It was a place filled with memories of swimming in 18 Mile Creek, exploring the woods, barbecuing, having bonfires, and fishing. At night, my 3 cousins and my sister would camp in tents outside the cottage in one of the open fields. We played a game called the Lantern Game, invented by my cousin, let's call him Timmy. We used a battery-powered lantern that we kept outside our tents for bathroom trips. The game was simple. One person would take the lantern into the deep woods, place it on the ground, and then return. The next person would go into the woods, find the lantern, and carry it further before returning. The last one brave enough to fetch the lantern and bring it back won the game. We had a few flashlights at the tree line, and the distant sound of voices was our guide back. Being one of the younger cousins, I usually quit after my first or second turn. But that year, at 16, I was determined to prove myself, especially to my 2 older sisters. Timmy and his older brother, Jimmy, were legends at the Lantern Game. They would disappear into the woods for 15 or 20 minutes before returning, and Timmy, or Jimmy, always won. One night, it came down to me, my oldest sister, and Timmy and Jimmy. Just before my turn, Jimmy warned me to watch out for Grandma and Grandpa. I brushed it off, trying to act cool, but once I was in the woods, fear gripped me. My heart pounded as I thought of my grandpa, who I remembered as a kind man, but now as a dead, rotting body lurching behind me. My grandma was just a name and a face in an old photograph to me. I was about 3 football fields deep in the woods, struggling to find the lantern, and I kept hearing noises. My mind was racing. Suddenly, goosebumps covered my body and I felt an electric charge. I couldn't hear my family anymore. Instead, I saw a small shack with a dim light inside about 30 feet away, something I had never seen before. I froze, thinking I might have wandered onto someone else's property, but it didn't make sense, since this was my grandpa's property. The shack looked run down, like something from a horror story. Time seemed to stop. I saw a wooden chair in front of the door. I told myself not to move. I didn't see or hear any movement from inside, but the light being on told me that someone was there. After what felt like a long time, I gathered the courage to run. I bolted back to the tree line, my senses heightened. I ran as fast as I could, dodging trees until I saw the flashlights of my cousins and sisters. I told them about the shack. We decided to go back together to find it, but it wasn't there. Even in the daylight, with my uncle leading the search, we found nothing. To this day, I have no idea what happened. We walked this way to get to 18 Mile Creek, so we know the land pretty well. I saw the shack clear as day with that dim light on. My best guess is that my mind conjured it up, a memory born of panic of my dead grandfather while playing that stupid game. Though I have no idea why it was a shack. I've only shared this story in intimate settings. It still unsettles me. I'm in my 30s, because I know I saw that shack. Now, it's part of our family's folklore about Grandpa's cottage. Just a heads up, the story does mention attempts of suicide, self-harm, and the likes, so if that is not something you want to listen to, I recommend going to the description below and choosing the timestamp for the next story. So, to start, I keep getting the lingering thought in my mind and it keeps coming up more and more, that I'm in a coma. Yeah, I know it sounds insane, but I really get that feeling. I was about 18, and I had about 23-ish suicide attempts. And I don't mean just holding a gun, I mean straight up overdosing on purpose. So, last attempt I had, I was 18, and I had a gun in my mouth. My sister showed up before it happened, and I'm here, but I had multiple dreams saying stuff like, wake up, get up, etc. And it keeps lingering in my mind, what if I did pull the trigger? And it won't go away or be quiet. To make things worse, every time I make a post or talk to someone about it, I reset. Like I'm in a time loop and forget everything after I wake up, only having these memories come back like 2 hours before I make the post to begin with. I'm not joking, trolling, or even trying to make a joke. This is genuinely freaking me out. Every loop is the same in the big things, but it's the little things that change. I'll go to the same dinner, but the smaller things are changed, like the menu, or the posters, etc. Like I'm in a different place, but also not just enough to be different, but not the same day as last. For the gamers out there, even when I'm driving, I see glitches in the roads. Like, straight up texture missing, and an endless pit, it looks like. Even when I'm not high, it's either my eyes skizz out, or it's like I'm seeing through the cracks. Like my mind is finally starting to realize I'm in a coma in the hospital. It won't convince me I'm not in a coma, because that's what my mind would obviously say, but can someone just say that I'm not just to give me some stress relief? And for context, this happens every time I'm super high, but I forget it's the next day, so I can't remember to not smoke at night. But the more weird thing is, when I'm not high, I still go through the loop. I only realize it's a loop when I am. And the worst part is, after I get off Reddit in like an hour, I go to bed and reset the loop. And I can't stop myself. It's like after writing, I get possessed to go to bed and sleep, and I'm left with the realization and fear that I can't stop this loop no matter what I do, because it's a loop in a coma. Almost like my mind is wanting to keep me from realizing I am in a coma so badly that it put me in a time loop inside of a coma, almost like a double wall. And now I'm getting even more scared that I'm gonna get put back in the loop. And I can't do anything to change that. Even making this post is a part of my loop. I feel like I'm in hell. This happened about a month or so back in the city that I live in, up in the northeastern United States. Let me preface this by saying how much rage and contempt I feel in my heart when driving on major roads behind cyclists, particularly during peak rush hours. I don't mean folks who rely on bicycles to commute to and from work. You know who I mean. The competitive, sunglasses and spandex leotard wearing variety. Just out there messing up traffic because of their sport. Anyway, cue the image that I just gave you as I'm driving to the gym after work. I'm crawling at 15 to 20 miles per hour or so below the speed limit, losing my damn mind behind this clown. I obviously have nothing but time to stare down the source of my frustration and take in every inch of his bike and obnoxious leotard. It said something about Team FUBAR, which I later looked up. It appears to be a cycling team based in Los Angeles, California, nowhere near where this happened. Anyway, the bike was lime green and the outfit was loudly adorned with squiggly lines, with 2 big bold X's on the legs. I noticed those because they reminded me of the X on Chopper's hat from One Piece. Eventually, the cyclist decides to turn off the main road we were on and makes a right onto a dead-end road beneath a small overpass. Brimming with joy, I exclaim, "Good! Because of you, this drive was really foobarred." Hilarious, I know. And then I triumphantly advanced to the freaking speed limit. I hit all the green lights, turned left onto a short bridge, and hit a red light after crossing it. This all took maybe 45 to 60 seconds. Now, who's at this intersection parked on an adjacent bike trail? You guessed it. I was really caught off guard by this because I instantly recognized the lime green bike, the Team FUBAR logo, and the big X's on the pant legs, re Chopper. Now, there is absolutely no way that he kept up pace and wound up there, because A, I did not see him after we parted ways, and B, there's no way for a cyclist to travel that fast on a bike. I thought, okay, weird. Maybe there's a trail or something that connects the dead-end road to the bike path, and went about my gym excursion. On the drive home, I scoped out the area and saw that it's nothing but water. There is no bridge except for the one that I drove on, way ahead of him. Now, unless this guy rode his bike across the freaking water like Admiral Aokiji, there is simply no access. When I got home, I studied the area on Google Maps and found absolutely no way to get from the overpass he turned under to the bike path across the river, neither without passing me along the way, nor in such a short amount of time. I've driven through the area many more times since then, and I am still bewildered. The only explanation that I can muster is that it was 2 separate cyclists from that team, with matching bikes, who both happened to be out riding that area or meeting up with each other. I'm fairly certain it was the same guy, though, so I don't know about this. Again, this happened in the northeastern US, so I'm not sure how big a following or membership a California-based team would have out here. It was bizarre, and my day was really foobarred. I, male, mid-20s, was diagnosed with some kind of seizure disorder that isn't epilepsy, as MRIs and EEGs show short, intense bursts of seizure activity. After my first seizure, I've started to have extremely vivid dreams of specific situations that have never happened before, and having them happen the next day. Here are the 2 most recent examples from this last week. First, dreaming of winning $150 on a scratch-off, even though I've never played them. The next morning I went to the store I remembered from my dream, which I have never been to. And, to my surprise, they had the same $150 winning ticket. It absolutely blew my mind. Last night was the strangest experience I have ever had. I had dreamt that I was going to pick up a prescription. Totally normal, right? Well, not so much. For some reason, in the dream, they gave me this weird white and blue bottle, instead of pills in a regular orange prescription bottle as they have always come. When I woke up this morning, I had a notification from the pharmacy that my prescription was ready. When I picked it up and I was walking out, I felt something totally different in the stapled shut prescription bag. It felt like a bottle inside of a bottle. No way that it could be the same one from the dream, right? When I got back to the car, I ripped open the bag to find the exact white and blue bottle from the dream, down to the manufacturer's name, inside of another orange bottle. This is all so new to me, and honestly, it's making me feel quite different. It started off as conversations that I just chalked up to deja vu, but now it's getting really weird. What do you all think about this? This happened about 2 weeks ago, and for a little bit of context, my parents have been divorced for over 10 years. My dad recently started going out with a vegan girl, and as a result, whenever she comes to his house, he has to buy vegan stuff for her. Sometimes they leave some stuff for me. And for the last month, I've stayed at my grandparents' house. My dad comes regularly to see me, and sometimes brings me stuff. The day after having her at his house, they bought a box of vegan ice cream bars. The box had 4 of them. My dad ate 1. His girl ate 1, and he gave me the remaining 2. I didn't really want ice cream at the moment, so I left them in the freezer. The next day, while looking for a snack in the fridge, I remembered that I had those ice cream bars, so I went for them. I opened the box and reached for one when I noticed that there were 3 bars now. I didn't think much of it, as I thought it was a box of 5. So I grabbed my ice cream and left the others in the freezer. The next day, my dad came to see me, and so I told him about the extra ice cream. And he told me that the box had 4 bars. They had eaten 2 and left me the other 2. So I went to check the box for the extra ice cream, and there was 1. And the box said that it had 4. My grandparents can't really eat ice cream because it would make them sick, and besides, they knew they were my bars. So they would have asked me before eating one. Or, in case they did, they would have told me. Which, when I asked, they said they didn't even touch the box. Even stranger, I went to check the trash just in case there was an extra ice cream wrapper. But there was just the one that I ate that day before, and I swear to God there were 3 bars the night before. And there was nobody else in the house besides my grandparents and myself. And no, my dad didn't eat any bar after he gave me the box. Thinking about other Glitch in the Matrix stories, I would like to think that in another universe, someone lost an ice cream bar one day and the next day, they got it back. Hi Raven, I would like to share with you the story of my glitching coat cupboard. I'm in England and I own and live in the bottom flat of a Victorian property. It was built in 1892, and I know that most Americans think that's old, but for us in England, we don't find it that old at all. In fact, the city in which I live comprises very many houses of that age, and older, many being built in Georgian times. My house, before it was split into flats, was originally owned by a whole family, and they had servants downstairs in the bit where I now live with my children. I also own a large cellar and have a mezzanine level where there are 2 children's bedrooms. The layout means that my flat surrounds the main stairs of the property, which are not in my flat, and as a result I have some odd twists and turns to the extent that when I first moved in, it took me nearly a week to work out which way to go when I left the kitchen. As a result, there are some strangely shaped cupboards in the flat. one of which is built into one of the walls outside the kitchen. It's over 8 foot tall, 6 foot wide, but no more than 15 inches deep, so we use it to store all of the family's shoes and coats. If we lived in Edinburgh, it would be known as an Edinburgh press. About 5 years ago, my boyfriend and I went to leave the house and go outside the front door when we realized it had started to rain. As he lives in his own house and hadn't brought a coat with him, I said that I would nip back into the flat and see if I could find any coat big enough for him to wear. I ran back in and opened the coat cupboard that I have just described, stuck my hand in to rummage around, and pulled out a navy blue waterproof coat. Bear in mind that there is no light in this cupboard, and we don't keep that many coats in there. I took it back to him thinking that it was one of my son's coats, and he put it on. Immediately we saw there was a logo on the front of the coat for the supermarket Aldi. We were both astonished. My son does not own an Aldi coat, nor does anybody else in the house, as none of us have ever worked there. We have absolutely no idea where this coat came from. We thought for a long time about who had visited the house, and there was nobody who would have left such a coat. We thought it was quite funny at the time, and my daughter later adopted the coat and wears it to this day. How did that coat get there? I clear out the cupboard on a yearly basis, and it was definitely not there when I last cleared it out. That's not the end of the story, though. Last year I noticed for the first time behind all the other coats in the cupboard, there was a detachable hood, which had fake fur around it. I kept saying to myself that I had thrown away the coat that it was attached to a couple of years ago, and I should really throw away that hood as well because the coat was so scruffy, and there was no use for the hood. I kept seeing that hood every time I opened the cupboard for a few weeks. After a while, I finally got round to thinking about throwing away that hood. It's a simple task, I know. So I pulled out the hood to find it attached to a different coat. It was a black maternity coat from the shop New Look, which is very common here in England, and there's one on every high street. I stopped and thought how on earth this coat could have got there. It was a size 10, which is a small size in England, and still had all its tags attached. We all pondered about where the coat had come from. I phoned my daughter, who no longer lives with us, and she said it definitely wasn't hers. And she did bring a friend round the other day whom we also contacted, and she said it wasn't hers either. None of us is a size 10. I thought so hard about who else had visited and even called my hairdresser, who is a mobile hairdresser, so very conveniently visits me at my house. She said it definitely wasn't hers either. I have a friend who works at New Look, and I took a photo of the tags and sent those to him, wondering if he could work out when the coat was made. Sure enough, he said it was from the autumn collection in 2021. When I found the coat, it was 2023. It still had all the tags on, and had only just appeared in the back of my coat cupboard. I don't think we will ever know where this coat came from, but it was in perfect condition. So I took it to a charity shop so that someone else who was a size 10 and expecting a baby could make good use of it. There is no spooky vibe about my house at all, and it feels very welcoming and a happy place to be. I just wonder if somebody is sending coats from another dimension to us for no particular reason. But who knows? I worked a fair distance from my house, and had two close friends that lived very close to my workplace. One I had graduated high school with, we were now in college, and a guy we were both friends with lived on the same side of the main drag as I worked very close by. After work, it was normal that I would meet up with one or both of them to meet up for dinner or shopping, with 2 good malls and several nice strip malls and loads of good restaurants that we all liked. So it was so normal that I'd be nearby and dropping over. And one day, while it was only lunchtime, my male friend was home that day in his kitchen and had the front door open with a heavy wooden frame and 2 large ancient screens in it, and a big hook that kept it latched. He had made himself a sandwich and was moving toward the living room to catch some TV news, and saw me in the living room and called out, "How'd you get in?" I didn't answer, just standing there. He walked into the living room a few feet from me and then turned to see where I'd sat, but nobody was there at all. The side door was locked by the driveway and the front one was still latched. The house was small with a large living room and kitchen, a small bathroom and a small hallway with 2 bedrooms. There was no way that I'd walked past him. His path was straight forward to that front door. At this time, in my dimension anyway, I was at work around the block, maybe 3 storefronts up. When I later was off work, it was 7 p.m. I did drop by and he asked me about it, and I was completely curious about it too. As if this wasn't weird enough, I then went home and my mother said to me, "I saw you walk right into your bedroom this morning at 10 o'clock. I thought maybe you were sick and called out to you, but you kept walking, so I followed, but there was no one in the room." So, 2 level-headed people both saw me, but I was busy at work all day, well into the evening. Does anyone have any insight into this? Hey everyone. This glitch in the Matrix happened to me maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and I have been intending on sharing the story. But it's honestly hard for myself to even wrap my head around this, and I was the one who experienced it. And the shyness led to inaction, which then led to forgetfulness. Anyway, I have excess free time today and was thinking about this event. I thought I might as well put it out there. I listen to audiobooks very actively. I use some round-the-neck Bluetooth earbuds. You won't see me without these things around my neck. I like their functionality. Just press the button and resume the book. Press it again to pause. No need to go fetching my phone out. One day, as I was packing up my laptop and other things after work, I received a call that I had been waiting for. One of those call you back instead of waiting things. And I answered it, originally with my Bluetooth headset, but it was an automated system needing actual phone key inputs, so I took my phone out of my pocket to put in the necessary information, and then continued to pack up my stuff and leave. I got to my car and put my bag and carry case in the passenger seat. I spoke with the rep for about maybe another 5 minutes, and then completed that call. Once the call was completed, my audiobook resumed playing as it should. I started up the car and drove home. Unwinding from my day listening to a book is my favorite thing to do. I don't live terribly far from work, maybe 12 miles. After getting home, I start to prepare dinner while continuing to listen to my book when I hear the sound of my phone indicating a call, interrupting my listening experience. I press the button on the headset to answer the call and say hello. You can't see who is calling you when answering the phone like this. I then hear my coworker's voice. They seem a little confused. They say my name, I say their name back. Then there is a bit of awkward silence. I begin to wonder as the possibility of what might have happened since leaving the office. And I ask, "Is everything alright? Is something going on?" And they ask, "Well, are you still here?" I say, "No, I'm at home now, but I have my laptop if you need help with something. What's going on?" My coworker then says, "Well, I saw that there was a cell phone on your desk, and I thought you might have left yours, so I called you, and it rang. I thought you had left, but then you answered the call." We were both silent then. At one moment, I was in the middle of chopping up some carrots and thinking about switching gears into work mode. Then I had to dedicate the brain power to what my coworker just said. As an intelligent, adult human being, my response was elegant and direct. Huh? More silence. Coworker says, I'm looking at your phone on your desk. It's showing that our call is active right now. I move my hand down to my pocket that I keep my phone in and give it the trusty patent check, only to find that my phone pocket is empty. As my hand is resting on my empty pocket, I start saying, that can't be right. Bluetooth doesn't have that kind of range. Only then to have the call disconnect. The Bluetooth headset gives the beep beep of it trying to find the device that it's paired to. Beep beep, beep beep. Then the Bluetooth device powering itself off as it cannot find its paired device or a new device wanting to pair to it. I stand in my kitchen for a minute longer thinking about this. It must be some kind of prank or something. My coworker doesn't live terribly far away, but how would they have stayed close enough as I was on the freeway? I try turning on the headset as I go to my bag and check for my phone. There's nothing there. I turn the headset on as I run outside to check my car. No phone. I'm a tad flustered at this point, so I hop in the car and drive back to the office. Getting into the office, I head to my work area to find my phone on my desk where I had taken it out of my pocket to put in the dial pad numbers before I had left. I unlocked the phone and checked the call history to see the call log of my coworker and I's 2-minute and 11-second long conversation. I walk over to my coworker's section to talk to him about the call, and upon seeing me they say, "Oh good, so you were here. You had me pretty freaked out, man." I didn't want the kid to be scared or anything, so, thinking fast, I say something like, "Yeah, someone needed my help upstairs with something." Still, to this day, I think about this. How was I just interacting with the Bluetooth features of my phone at such a large distance? Recently, there have been a lot of studies about how most of our reality is what we can perceive, and how much of our perception is dictated on what we can predict with our senses. What if, in my mind, I was just predicting that my phone was in my pocket, and because of that, my Bluetooth should be connected, and after the call is completed, my audiobook would resume playing. Or maybe whoever is watching over my simulation had a major screw-up, and didn't notice that I had left the phone, and was freaking out when I had realized I didn't have it on me. I don't know. It's hard for me to wrap my head around this. Some of you were very interested in my other experience, and as I replied to you all, I will now post about my other encounter with the absurd. It was past midnight, and I was on my way back home just like any other day. Unfortunately, on this occasion, I was walking alone. My route back home usually goes through an alleyway located between an old convent school and a block of flats. I've never seen anything strange, nor have I heard of anyone seeing anything anomalous. But this time it was different. I was approaching the entrance of the alley when I suddenly noticed a shape. A tall man in dark clothing, possibly with a hood, walking towards me. I guessed that the person was black, but I'm not sure since it was 20 to 30 meters away and I wear glasses, so I'm not the best at picking up precise details in the distance. Despite that, even though subjective, I somehow felt the shape was staring directly at me, and that feeling was not pleasant at all. No one else could be seen, and I was the only one walking through the alley. I felt a bit startled. Although where I live is a tranquil place, getting mugged is always a real thing. This person was already inside the alley and kept moving towards me for a few seconds. I would say that he reached between 1/3 and 1/2 of the total length of the alleyway, approximately 45 meters long. Then, I quickly looked down, and when I looked in front of me again, there was no trace of the eerie person. Absolutely nothing. Just the empty passage, and a teenage couple walking hand in hand in the background on the adjacent street. I didn't look away for more than 0.75 to 1 second. I didn't feel scared. I was just utterly confused. I hastened my pace to peek around corners, and when I reached the end of the alley, I saw no sign of that person. The next perpendicular street was 40 meters away from the exit of the passage. I've made the measurement using Google Maps. So this person should have walked back the 15 to 23 meters covered inside the passage in 1 second. With a conservative estimate, 15 meters in 1 second, he would have had to have run at around 54 kilometers an hour. I checked for any doorway or entrance between the shape and me, and there's only one. It's a rundown, decrepit wooden door from an abandoned ancient house. I tried to push it open, but it wouldn't budge. The lock was so old and unused that it was corroded by rust. It looked like it hadn't been opened in decades, and probably would take a long time to open, accompanied by a loud creaking sound. It's hard to believe the shape took keys and opened the door quietly. I apologize for the length, but as an engineer, I can't help but be technical and provide as much information and facts as possible. Hi, Raven. I'm a longtime listener, and I enjoy the glitch, parallel universe, and time slip stories very much. It's been a while since anything strange has happened, but September of 2023, one unusual experience did occur on my way home from work. I haven't posted this anywhere else, although I did tell my husband about it, but he doesn't really believe in those things. It had been a long day, and I was so glad to be on the way home. The rain had stopped recently, and I was sitting at a red light. I intended to go straight when the light changed, but a white car in front of me decided to make a left turn instead, and awkwardly maneuvered their vehicle into the turn lane. They were a little short of space, so their car was left hanging out into my lane a good bit. I just stopped and waited until they could straighten up when the left turn signal let them go. Suddenly, I heard screeching tires behind me. I turned to see what was happening, but time slowed down. I didn't get fully turned, but I did see a gray car with dark tinted windows sliding up towards my passenger side. I saw black plastic and broken metallic glass flying through the air. I figured the gray car must have already hit someone else's car behind me. The car was sliding quickly toward the back fender and door on my passenger side. I braced for impact and waited. Nothing happened. I thought maybe the driver had somehow missed me. I looked forward expecting to see the gray car where it should have slid to a stop. It wasn't there. I saw a tan car in the far right lane come to a quick stop, but they didn't hit anyone. There weren't any broken plastic or glass bits in the road either. That was odd. The white car was quickly trying to get all the way out of my lane to avoid being hit, so I knew that they heard it too. I turned around fully to look behind me. The gray car wasn't there either, and none of the cars behind me were damaged. None of the drivers had gotten out of their vehicles, as most do after an accident. There was no debris. It was like nothing had happened. The drive home took so long. It really seemed abnormal. I stopped at a favorite restaurant to check my car. The restaurant was closed, but it felt nice to be in a familiar place. I got out and walked all around my car, expecting a broken taillight at least, but there was no damage at all. I couldn't understand it. I kept on driving, The sky looked weird, the clouds were strange colors. I discovered a road that I had never known existed. Then, finally, I made it home. I hope it wasn't quantum immortality. It was a weird thing, though. Nothing like that has ever happened to me before. I don't have any evidence for it, but I swear that I saw what I think is Jupiter moving on Thursday night. I looked at a star map, and if I'm correct, what I saw was Jupiter. The night was really cloudy, so maybe that had something to do with it, but when I saw this, the clouds had passed. I was looking at the sky, looking for a particular star I saw the other day, and I noticed I didn't see it. The moving star or planet wasn't what I had seen before, but I thought that it was. I was in my front yard instead of the back and didn't think much about the angle. Anyway, I noticed nothing under the moon, and then suddenly a bright star-looking thing appeared. It moved kind of like a firefly. It went up and down in a little zag until it found its place and stayed put. I want to note that it was very clear and fast movement that was not obstructed by clouds. At first I thought it was a bug, but it stayed the same size the whole time and stayed in place. I kept checking to see if it had moved. I thought it was a drone or a plane or something, but no, it stayed put. It looked a lot like a bright star. Then, later that night, both the moon and Jupiter disappeared. It looked like they were behind clouds, but I couldn't see any light from the moon at all, where I had been able to before. The next night I checked, no moon or weird star again, and then I left it be. I did a little research and realized the moon didn't seem like it was in the same phase that it was supposed to be in. It was probably the clouds making it look brighter, but the moon looked very full on Thursday night, and was not supposed to be for my area. Tonight, the moon is back, and so is the weird star that I think is Jupiter. But everything is normal. The moon is in normal phase, the star isn't moving or flashing. I do have a crappy video from the night of, but it features no movement nor disappearances. Maybe it was just me, but I swear I saw this. Any ideas or similar experiences? Hey Raven, so you featured me once on your channel when you told the Glitch in the Matrix story about my cat Mimo. This one, however, isn't as funny. It's just confusing. So I was walking home after running some errands, and I was almost home, about 2 minutes away. I just had to cross the street to get to my house. A little bit of explanation on how crossing streets works in my city. I won't say exactly which one for obvious security reasons. You have to wait for the traffic lights to turn green, then you can walk. It kinda sounds like every city now that I'm writing this. So, I basically had to wait for the cars on the very end of one street to pass the crossroads on the beginning of the new street that I was waiting on. It's usually a 2 to 3 minute wait, something like that. So, there I was, waiting for the green light to cross. I just dozed off into my thoughts while I waited. Sometime later, I can't exactly point out when, but I'm sure it passed the usual time limit for the light to not turn green just yet. I snapped back to reality to see the cars had already passed. Wait, something isn't right, I thought to myself. If the cars had passed, I would have snapped to reality and seen them, right? But the light was still red though, so this didn't make any sense to me. So either one of two things happened. I actually dozed off into my thoughts so much that even cars moving didn't alert me, which is unusual considering my habits. Or, time actually paused between the cars passing through and me snapping back. Or, as we like to call it, a glitch in the Matrix. And sorry if my explanation wasn't great, but I had to share my story with the best of the best. Much love. Thank you, Cryptic. And if any of you haven't seen it already, this last week on Wednesday I did a UFO encounter stories video featuring Cryptic Tales. Please do check it out if you haven't. Yes, this was a shameless self-promotion in my own video. So, I've had some strange experiences before now. One was actually read on this podcast before, but my life has been weird for a little while now. Let me provide some background information. I, 27, female, almost died last year. Nobody would take me seriously, and it took 2 walk-in clinics and 3 ERs 5 days to diagnose an appendix that had already been bursting. Turns out, I had chronic appendicitis, with an abnormal presentation. I felt the pain on the left side instead of the right. I had been sick since I was 14 years old, and looking back on past medical charts, I had the same symptoms multiple times during my life. I would be in severe pain, puking blood, fainting, etc., and nobody ever listened to me. I was labeled a hypochondriac, and even my mom told me it was just my head making things up. I had surgery and my life fell apart afterward. My family turned on me. I became homeless less than a week into recovery. Nothing was the same, and I didn't feel sick anymore. I was finally able to tell a secret I had kept for almost 20 years, and nobody believed me. They would tell me I was a horrible monster, and for a while I was convinced that I had died in surgery, because everything was so different. It took me a while to be convinced that I wasn't dead. My fiancé and I moved in with friends, and we saged the house for the first time. I was shaking violently the whole time and then fell to the floor crying. I had a mental block, hiding my childhood memories from me, and it felt as though someone left me, and I became a lot more sensitive to things around me, along with having memories back. I became obsessed with the energy around me. I could feel it now. I could feel people's emotions as my own, and learned a trick to get rid of the negative energy I had been picking up before. This brings us to the other day, when I experienced a glitch that actually made me question reality again for the first time in a long time. I had picked up a lot of negative energy from my roommate who was PMSing. I was snapping at people and just getting angry about little things. I realized what was happening and did my trick to get rid of the energy, and it worked. I felt better immediately. But then I noticed my roommate's dog's eyes and saw that the one eye had a chunk of blue in it. I pointed it out to my roommate and she said, "Yeah, he's got a pie-colored eye." And I was confused. You see, I've known her for a while at this point and could never remember what color her dog's eyes are. But in that moment, I remembered what she had always told me when I asked. I said, "I thought you said he had liver-colored eyes." And I knew that was what she had told me before, and I remembered her telling me this multiple times. And every time I was confused about it, but never questioned it. Because what the heck does a liver even look like? Liver-colored eyes doesn't make sense at all. And then she looked at me like I was crazy, and said that she's never used that term before to describe anything. I started doing some research on it. She has a red merle Australian Shepherd, and according to my Google search, red merle is a misleading color, and it's more accurately described as a liver merle, which is a blue merle, whose color didn't come in correctly, and the color looked exactly like her dog. Her and her fiancé had never heard the term before, and the only time I had ever heard the term is when she was describing her dog's eye color to me. So how did I know an obscure, rarely used term for her dog's coloring? And why can I suddenly remember so clearly what she had told me his eye color was now, when I could never remember before? Did me clearing the negative energy from my body send me to an alternate reality, where the only difference is my roommate's dog's eye color? Sorry if this story is confusing. I tried my best to get this out coherently. Thank you for reading this. It's nice to have someone to tell that won't just think I'm crazy. Hello, Raven. I go to sleep listening to your videos every night. I cannot sleep without your stories, so I'd first like to say how much I appreciate what you do. Thank you. Thank you as well. In one of your videos, I heard a story that is very similar to one that I experienced a few years back. I don't know if this is a glitch or just something unexplainable, but here it is. It was Christmas Eve, and my sister, 3 years older than me, and I were anticipating Christmas morning. As we were getting ready for bed, we made a plan to stay awake for 30 minutes or so after my dad went to bed, because we wanted to sneak out into the living room. Not to snoop at presents or anything like that, but if we weren't exactly tired when we went to bed, then we would plan these types of nights. To sneak into the living room and just talk about things until we were tired. Yeah, weird, I know, but we were bored. Anyway, I stayed up in my room for around 40 minutes when I saw my sister clear as day standing in my bedroom doorway. I didn't know why, but something felt a little off, so I continued to lay in bed and look at her. She never said a word, but then waved for me to come with her, so I figured she was just trying to be quiet, and I got out of bed to follow her. She started walking down the hallway that leads into the living room when she stopped midway, walked into a corner of the room, and then crouched down on the floor, resting her face on her knees. I walked closer to her, leaning down to ask her what she was doing, when she just disappeared right in front of my eyes. I was spooked, to say the least, and stood up quickly to look around, but when I didn't see her anywhere, I decided to go back into my bedroom. Her bedroom is right next to mine, so I peeked in there before going back into my room. When I looked in, she was in her bed, asleep. I tried calling out to her a couple of times, thinking she might be faking, but she was definitely asleep. I was so scared at that point that I went to my room and just laid in bed, refusing to look at my door for the rest of the night. The next morning, when we got up, I told her what happened and asked her if she knew anything about it. She told me she had no idea what I was talking about, and kind of brushed it off. I never told my parents or anyone else about it, in fear that people would think I'm crazy. But it's something I think about quite often, and still cannot shake the eerie feeling I had, and the shock of when she disappeared right in front of me. Over the years, I've considered astral projection, a glitch in the Matrix, or maybe just some kind of paranormal experience. But either way, I know what I saw, and even now when I think of that moment, I can still picture it vividly. I've brought it up to her a couple of times as we've gotten older, and she admits that it's creepy, but she still has no idea what I'm talking about. Hi, Raven. I don't know if this is really considered a glitch, but it is kind of interesting. At least to me. A little background, I am a quote-unquote stasher, meaning I stash things in drawers or cabinets, places they don't really go. Given that, I lose a lot of things. When I do lose things in my house, I obviously look for them, but I never find them. But if I just sit down for a couple of minutes and think about something else, the location of the object pops into my head. When I look for the object in the place that popped into my head, and it is always there. For instance, I recently lost my glasses. I looked around for about 15 minutes. I know you would think that I would just sit down and use my find things method. I finally sat down and thought about something else. Suddenly, I pictured my glasses underneath my dresser. I went to my bedroom, got down on my hands and knees, shined my phone light under the dresser, and there they were. I'm kind of famous in my family for finding things. My mother called me a few years ago to ask if I could think of where her diamond bracelet had ended up. Immediately, I pictured in my head flowers with brown underneath them, like dirt. I told my mother this. She went outside and looked in her flower garden in front of her house, and the one in the back of her house, but no watch. She gently teased me, saying that I had lost my touch. Since I lived right up the street from her at the time, I got in the car and went to her house. When I walked into her house, I was immediately drawn to her closet. I stood in her closet looking at the stack of shoeboxes. My mother has a shoe problem. All of a sudden, my eyes focused on a flowered shoebox. I'm sure you can see where this is going. I opened the flowered shoebox, and there was a pair of brown loafers inside. I picked up one of the loafers and turned it upside down. Out fell the watch. I really didn't want to ask my mother why she put her diamond watch in a shoebox in her closet, but she confessed that she'd had a couple glasses of wine at her country club the night before and had been wearing it. She wanted to keep it safe. I guess she's a stasher too. You know, the apple into the tree. In addition to my skill at locating lost objects, I can predict celebrity deaths. For instance, I woke up one day singing the song Lucille by Kenny Rogers. I picked up my phone. The first headline I saw said that Kenny Rogers had passed away. This has happened with various other celebrities as well over the years. Celebrities should beware if I start thinking about them. I don't usually specifically feel regular people's deaths. However, very recently, my ex-husband and my daughter's father was very close to dying from cancer. The night he passed away, I suddenly woke up because I was very thirsty. I don't have a clock in my bedroom, except for my phone, which I didn't look at. I went into the kitchen to get a bottle of water and said to myself, "Is it 4 a.m.? I looked at the clock, and sure enough, it was 4 a.m. The next morning, I got a text from his mother saying that he had passed away at 4 a.m. He died in a time zone that's an hour ahead of mine, but it was still 4 a.m. Sometimes I will get a general weird feeling. My sister calls it a disturbance in the force. But something always happens soon after the weird feeling starts. Sometimes with some person close to me, and sometimes not. Sometimes a car accident near my house, or sometimes a tragic event somewhere in the world. And that sort of thing. I've learned to trust that weird feeling. If I feel weird about something, I just stay home. Trust that intuition. This happened on one of the first days of January of this year. It might not be impressive, or the typical type of mystery, but to this day, I keep thinking about it. And I'm still baffled. My two friends and I had met to hang around out in the evening. It was a Friday, but there weren't too many people around, since Christmas, here in Spain it lasts until January 7th, had just finished recently. We were on at a table outside of a cafe and cocktail bars having some beers. It's important to mention that we were not already drunk, and that we are three young, tall, fit men accustomed to drinking regularly, which means that we have a high tolerance for alcohol. Also, I would like to mention that one of my friends is a policeman, and my other friend is an engineer student, while I'm already an engineer. We bought 4 33cl bottles of beer, and the bottles were of the same brand, Aguila. which has a unique blue label attached to it. The table was round and we were properly distributed around it, forming the vertices of an equilateral triangle. That means that each of us was watched by the other two at all times, as so was any person that could pass behind. We were joking and laughing and almost finishing the second bottle, when suddenly my fellow engineer friend stopped laughing and interrupted to say with a mystified expression, "What is the beer doing there?" When I heard it, I couldn't make any sense of it, but when I realized what he meant, I stopped laughing very quickly as well. One of the small bottles was no longer a blue Aguila beer, but an Estrella Galicia beer, with a red and black label color. It was also of the same size. Now, it's time to state a few things. One, you could say the three of us got confused, and that not all the beers were of the Blue Label brand. I would respect that thinking, as I would probably think the same too if I were you. But not only my two other friends and I are 100% sure, but also the offer we bought was an Aguila offer. I personally split the fourth bottle of Blue Aguila among the three of us. As I stated earlier, we are young boys, and we've never taken drugs. We are mentally and physically healthy, and we had never experienced anything paranormal before. 2. There were 3 tables around us, separated by approximately 1 to 1.5 meters from us. Only one person came behind one of us, and me and my other friends saw her moving at all times, without having a beer, and much less doing anything suspicious. The idea of a person approaching our table, taking one of our empty bottles and then replacing it with another different empty bottle is just preposterous. And 3, I thought that maybe one of my friends might have played a trick to mock us, but we never looked away from the table nor each other. At least, I didn't. We became serious soon because we were afraid of having drunk something possibly poisoned with some kind of drug. We were thinking about how to properly investigate what the hell had just happened, when a random mad woman came from inside yelling at us and ordering us to leave. Apparently she was the owner of the bar next to the one that we bought the beers from, and she was pissed off because we were sitting on a table that was from her place. We didn't notice, since at this spot, there are many bars very close to each other, and the tables were almost the same. We joked about this because it felt like as if an NPC was forced to spawn to divert our conversation and spoil our attempt to investigate any further. However, I can't really tell what happened, and up to this day, we keep talking about it. I decided to write about this after something even creepier happened to me yesterday, but this time I told no one about it since I feel like I won't be believed, and I'll start to lose respect or credibility. I can't blame anybody though, since I'm also a skeptical bastard that would also think that I'm either crazy or lying for attention. Since here I can speak anonymously, and you'll probably want to know about it, I'll make a post about that soon. Today, I may have experienced a glitch in the Matrix while walking my dogs. One of my dogs, a border collie, sometimes pulls on her walks. And because of this, she has always walked in a harness. It goes over her head, wraps under her chest, and clips closed on both sides of her body behind her front legs. It fits very snug on her. My border collie is walked on a 6-foot leash that is attached to the harness. There is no way that she can easily come out of the harness when she pulls or when standing still. The only way it may be possible for her to get out of it is if she backs away from you while she is looking at you with significant force, and at the same time you pull the leash towards yourself, i.e., like playing tug of war with your dog. In this extreme case, the harness could potentially pull over her head. Anyway, today it was raining lightly. No other people or dogs were around. Both of my dogs were relaxed, sniffing along a fence after walking for about 1.5 kilometers. As I said, she was relaxed. The leash was slack, and she was about 4 feet from me. When she finished sniffing a particular spot, she turned about 90 degrees toward me, and pop, the harness was on the ground next to her. It was all clipped together and still in the shape of her body. The only difference was that she was not in the harness. I wasn't talking on the phone, or looking at the screen, or daydreaming. I was just looking at the dogs to make sure they didn't pick up and eat any crap off the ground, as my dog sometimes does. It was like I blinked and she was out of the harness. I'm not a big Matrix believer, but thinking back on this event, the blink I experienced just before she popped out of the harness seemed to be more significant than a typical eye blink that lasts a microsecond. It was not a long blink, but for some reason my brain keeps thinking back to that blink, which seemed different. I keep wanting to describe it as a thicker and darker blink. It's hard to understand and explain. Anyway, do you think this could be a glitch in the Matrix? Or am I just losing my mind? This happened a few months ago, but I think about it daily. For Christmas, my partner gifted me 3 pairs of earrings, all in one gift set, one of which was a pair of stars. We stayed at my mother-in-law's house for the holidays, so we were living out of bags and suitcases, and therefore I made sure that I kept the earrings in their box on the bedside table, so as to not lose them. It was a few days after Christmas that we decided to go on a girls' shopping trip in a nearby town. I chose to wear the star earrings that I was gifted, but because I had already worn the other 2 sets, and they were in my jewelry bag, this was the last set left in the original box. I put them on, and I left the empty box as a reminder to put all 3 sets back in when we returned home. As we're leaving, my mother-in-law compliments my earrings, and I jokingly do a pose to show them off. It's a few hours later, and I'm in a store's changing room trying on clothes, when I notice I'm only wearing 1 earring. I didn't feel it fall out, but I check the cubicle and retrace my steps around the store in hopes that it may have fallen out recently. My mother-in-law even acknowledges that one is missing once we reunite outside the store, so I know for sure that I was wearing them both before we left the house. I cut my losses and accept that it likely fell out hours ago, and it would be impossible to find. So we continue about our day. I leave the lonely earring in as I didn't want to damage it in my purse, but I keep checking it's there every so often. When we return home, I'm sorting through the items I've purchased, and go to put away things when I see the earring box on the bedside table. It has 1 star earring in it. It's still hooked into the original card with the backing on it. I just froze, thinking I had lost my mind and only put in 1 earring this morning, and misremembered, but grateful that I still had a complete set after all. I took the earring to the mirror to put it in, and there I see that I'm not wearing the other one. It completely disappeared. I know it was there not even 5 minutes before, as I had looked in the car mirror just before I came into the house. But now it's gone. So somehow, I had left the house with 2 earrings in, came home with none, and found 1 still in the packaging. I went to a high school in a very small one-stoplight sort of town. A few years after school, I was catching up with an old friend, and she told me how these 2 boys that we knew pretty well had passed away. We'll call them Josh and Sean. I asked what had happened, and she sent me news articles about how they were working in a shop and an air compressor had exploded and killed them both. Fast forward a few years later, and somehow it came up in a conversation I was having with my dad. I decided to try to find the news article I had previously read about it. Instead, I found an article about how Josh had been shot by people who broke into his house looking for drugs. There was actually a lot of detail in the article about the incident, and it was an unsolved crime. There was no mention of Sean at all, and I couldn't find any articles about anything happening to him. I don't have any connections any longer to anyone in the town, so I can't check to see if anyone else remembers it the original way. It's just crazy because I remember vividly reading both articles. I know for a fact that it wasn't just someone with the same name for two reasons. First, he had a very unusual last name, and it was a very small town. Second, there were actual photos of him provided in both articles, and it was 100% the kid I knew from school. Another strange twist is that I looked up the story again just now to see if there was anything new. It seems the case was solved, and 4 or 5 people went to prison for it. The second story has also now been featured in an episode of a TV series that I've never heard of. I'm considering trying to track it down so that I can watch it. So I've been listening to your stories for a while. I keep thinking, how can this keep happening to so many people? And I couldn't think of anything that's happened to me, like anything that I hear in the stories. That is until just yesterday. Yesterday I experienced my own glitch in the Matrix. At least that's what I'm calling it. I was home alone and in the kitchen preparing dinner for my husband that was due to walk in the door from work within the hour. I was moving about the kitchen, opening drawers and closing cabinet doors, getting the meal prepped to be cooked. And then I heard the familiar slam of the security door and the closing of the inside door along with the movement of the garage door to the kitchen. We don't enter our house through the front door. We have a finished garage and that door is right at the end of the driveway, so we just enter the house via the finished garage room and walk through the door to the kitchen to get into the actual house. We use the garage room for crafts and laundry. So when we first walk in, we set down our keys and take off our sunglasses and then walk into the house. I'm pointing this out because on this particular day, I had picked up my husband's new RX glasses, and I sat them on the table that we put our sunglasses and keys on so he'd see them when he first walked in. I then went into the kitchen and started getting dinner ready. And that's when I heard the front door. I heard the security door slam. I heard the inside door close, which made the garage door move. Then I heard the snap shut of the RX glasses case. It's a hard shell. I then heard muffled talking. I thought to myself my husband was trying on the glasses and commenting out loud to himself. Then I heard the garage door move again and the slam of the security door. I stood there and wondered why he didn't come into the house. Where did he go? I then remembered that the lenses in his RX glasses got dark in the sun, so I looked outside thinking he was trying them out. Only he wasn't there. He was, however, across the street talking to someone that he knew. So I just thought he came inside, but then a friend had pulled up, so he went back outside and across the street. Well, when I hear the security door and inside door and garage door move again, I look in the garage and he's standing there about to pick up the RX glasses case. It was then that I asked why he didn't come in the house the first time he came home. He looked at me puzzled and asked what I meant. So I explained hearing the doors and the glasses case and the muffled talking. He said the last time he was home was hours ago for his lunch, until just now. The person he was talking to outside pulled up as he was walking home, so he stopped to chat before coming all the way home. Our front doors were locked. We don't leave them unlocked. The slamming of the security door would only be to deadbolt it. There's no handles, so it will just swing open with the wind, unless the deadbolt is engaged. So, I'm guessing that, for a few minutes or so, I was in another timeline. I don't really know what happened. I can say that I have no explanation for hearing someone walk through my front door, no explanation for hearing the security door slam, and no explanation for hearing the glasses case and muffled talking. It just happened yesterday, but I'm totally consumed. It's all I can think about. The alternative is, maybe I'm going crazy. Okay, so in order for everyone to understand this story, I need to do a physical description of the part of the room that I'm in. The bed is against the east wall, and my purse is just beneath the side of the bed. Last night, I was kneeling facing the bed and rummaging in my purse. Behind me and to my right, a few feet, is an air mattress, sat parallel on the south wall. Against the south wall is the heater. It has a table on one side and a desk on the other, so the air mattress blocks off access to it unless you step over the air mattress. Yesterday, my friend gave me a beautiful necklace and a matching set of earrings. They came in a box, but I happened to carry a couple of jewelry bags in my purse with me because, well, long story, but they're in my purse. So I pulled out one of those bags to put the necklace and earrings in it. Then I closed the bag and put it back in my purse. Unfortunately, one of the earrings did not make it into the jewelry bag, and just was sitting on the carpet between my knees. I didn't think anything of that, because I'm blind and sometimes I just drop things, so I picked it up and opened my purse again, reaching back in for the jewelry bag, and it was gone. I opened every compartment and pocket in that thing, and the jewelry bag was nowhere. But I figured that this was just a case of me not looking well enough and I would just find it the next time I looked inside. So I dropped the earring into a zipper pocket. I'm staying over at my friend's place, so my next order of business was to make up the bedding on the air mattress. I had to keep stepping over it to the side closets to the heater, making sure that the blankets are even, and as I was over there, I stepped on something soft underneath the heater. You already know what it was. Somehow, my jewelry bag was sitting under the heater, basically across the room. There was literally no way it could have gotten there. I just chalked it up to another unexplainable mystery of life. This happened about 6 years ago, during a summer holiday with friends. I live in Athens, Greece, and some friends and I decided to visit Macedonia for 1 week that summer. We spent the days at a picturesque spa, but we also drove around to take in the beautiful surrounding towns, villages, and other wonderful sights. On the third day, we drove around admiring the view, stopping at a village for lunch. We then decided to head for the town of Edessa, to see the old town, the impressive waterfalls, and the view of the vast valley below. We found a quaint coffee shop with a stunning view where we had our coffee, before heading back to our hotel. On the way to the car park, which incidentally is centrally located and extremely busy, especially during the holiday season, I became aware that my phone was not in my bag. Assuming I had left it on the table in the coffee shop, I rushed back to retrieve it, while the others waited in the car. To my dismay, I had not left it on the table as the waiter assured me that he did not find a phone when he cleaned it. I ran back to the parking and told my friends to look in the car and check if it had fallen out there. One of my friends kept calling my number persistently, but although the phone was ringing, i.e. the battery wasn't dead, we could not hear anything within the car. All 5 of us searched the parking thoroughly, while constantly calling my phone number and looking beneath the car, and even in some bushes near which I had not been. But I was getting so desperate that I told my friends to venture even further out, just in case. We searched the parking area for at least 10 minutes, as I was on the brink of hysteria. Let me add that this phone was a very important tool for work, and apart from the phone numbers of clients, I had other vital information stored in it. In fact, I had told myself repeatedly that I should make a backup, but never got around to it, so I had lost the numbers of people that I had to call soon as I returned to work. Eventually, we decided that we could rule out the car park and go back to the hotel. My friends consoled me, telling me not to stress, that I had probably left the phone at the hotel or at the restaurant. As soon as we arrived at the hotel, you can imagine that I left no sheet or cushion unturned. I even checked the toilet bin, and asked the others to check if it was in their rooms. That's how desperate I had become. My final hope was the restaurant. First thing in the morning, I called the restaurant only to be told that they had not found a phone. My hopes were dashed, as I finally realized that I had to give up any hope of finding it. Though every 15 minutes or so, I kept asking one of my friends to call my number, just in case someone would hear it and pick it up. Miraculously, it kept ringing, so at least the battery hadn't gone flat. The next 2 days went by, but my joy had dissipated as I went through the motions of password changes and other such details, as I feared that if someone did find the phone, they might access my mail and other sensitive information. On our last night, as we were driving back to the hotel, I decided to say a prayer and ask Saint Venorios to help me find my phone. It was one of these phases where you close your eyes, cross your fingers, and make a silent entreaty to higher powers. Saint Venorios is a Greek saint that we pray to for the purpose of finding lost items. I was not a particularly devout person, but I was very distressed, and it was an act of despair, I'm sorry to say. A voice in my head had told me to go to the parking lot, and that I would find it. I asked someone to call my phone, and they looked at me with that martyred look of, not again, but indulged me anyway. The phone was ringing. Its battery had not died after so many days, which gave me hope. I pleaded with the friend who was driving to go back to the town of Edessa and check. Early next morning, we would be driving back to Athens, a 7-hour drive. I begged my friend to do this for me as a special favor, and eventually they relented. By the time we reached the parking, it was 12:30 a.m. There were only a few parked cars, and hardly anyone was around. One of my friends dialed my number, and we heard and saw the phone as the screen lit up. As you walk in the parking, it was on the first row of parking spaces, on the left, in the second parking space. We all stood there thunderstruck and speechless. I ran and picked it up, checking for any damage. It was intact, as if someone had just placed it there. There was not even a speck of dust on it. How was this possible? First and foremost, how was it that nobody saw it in such a busy place, in the most central part of the town that receives hundreds of visitors daily? Not to mention the shoppers who park there, as it's near the main shopping center. Secondly, how was it possible that no car ran it over, as I'm sure that many cars must have parked in that very parking spot in the interim? Thirdly, if it was in such a conspicuous place, why didn't any of us searching for it for at least 10 minutes see it or hear it? And fourthly, why hadn't the battery run out after so many days? I'm still bemused as I cannot find any logical explanation for it. By the way, tradition mandates that the person who has found the lost item bake a special cake called phanerapita, and take it to church on Sunday. Then, after the Sunday service, the cake is offered to members of the congregation. I must admit that I have yet to make the cake, but I keep promising the saint that I will because it was a small miracle, wasn't it? By the way, I'm now a devout believer, and for anyone who is curious about the cake, just type Greek Phaneropita, that's Phanouropita, the cake for lost things on YouTube, and you'll have the recipe. Just in case you lose something indispensable. And I am so sorry if I butchered any of those words. Google told me how to pronounce them, and if it's wrong, blame them. Hi, Raven. I've always been interested in everything paranormal and creepy. From the time I was little, I was fascinated with ghosts, and could watch any scary movie alone by myself now. Just in the last few years, I learned of glitches in the Matrix and started watching videos. This is how I came onto your channel, and it is by far my favorite. I listen sometimes while driving to work or getting ready for the day. After learning about glitches, I realized my experience would indeed be considered a glitch. I don't want to be too specific in order to protect the privacy of those involved. So, about 5 years ago, I used to work for a pretty popular franchise restaurant. While there, I developed a pretty close relationship with one of my managers. Let's call her Mary. We became pretty close friends, and we even hung out outside of work. Me and her and our significant others as well. We even had a friend's Thanksgiving before. I got to know her really well, and she told me all about her family. She told me about her sister and her nieces, Emily and Jade. She talked about taking them shopping and getting their hair done for them. She loved them very much and spent a lot of time with them. I never saw the two nieces in person, but I saw pictures of them that she showed me of family camping trips, etc. About a year after I left to start work at another place, my friend Mary was in a very serious accident. She suffered brain damage and has to be taken care of for the rest of her life. I was devastated. I added Mary's sister and family members on social media in order to stay updated on her health. Around 6 months ago, I noticed a lot of posts from Mary's sister of one of her daughters. Only the one, Emily. She was in sports and about to graduate, so pictures constantly. I thought to myself that she never posts about Jade. I wonder how little Jade is doing. Being nosy, I went to her profile and started looking for anything about Jade. After months and months of going through posts, I could not find one trace of this girl. When I found nothing, I started to feel crazy. I kept searching and looking back. Years, but nothing. I went to other family members' posts of birthday parties and cookouts. No picture, no tag, no posts about Jade at all. She doesn't exist. Apparently, Mary's sister only has one daughter, Emily. I feel really confused, and I know what I saw from Mary's pictures in the past. I remember all of the stories about two nieces. I would never ask in order to not be disrespectful, but it's just something I have to accept as reality. As crazy as it is, and I'll never get an answer. In July of 2023, my daughter and I saw a movie trailer that caught our attention because it had David Harbour in it, which caused us both to immediately exclaim, "Hopper!" at the same time, since he played as a character with that name in a show that we both like. This, of course, got us to watch the commercial to see if the movie might be worth watching. The trailer was about a young kid that was a video game player and wanted to be a race car driver. He appeared to be about 10 years old, blonde and light-skinned. In one part that my daughter and I both remember, David Harbour was down on one knee to be at eye level with the kid outside the passenger side door of a race car, giving him a pep talk that amounted to, "You can do anything that you set your mind to." I pointed out that the kid looked a lot like Haley Joel Osment in The Sixth Sense, and we pulled up a trailer for that movie to compare them. My daughter agreed that they did look very similar. The trailer said the movie was Gran Turismo, and would be in theaters within the next month, and since we also played video games and like inspirational stories, we decided to watch it when we could. But timing when it came out wasn't the greatest for us, so we decided to wait until it was available on a streaming service that we were subscribed to. In March, we were wanting to watch a movie, so I checked for that one. Sure enough, it was available on our streaming service, so we enthusiastically watched it. A good half hour into it, we were wondering why we hadn't seen the main character yet. David Harbour, though his personality seemed a lot different than in the trailer, was in it, and the storyline was the same, but the only kids were older, and the main one was dark hair with dark skin. We waited thinking the kid we saw in the trailer just hadn't shown up yet, but another half hour in, we were pausing it, checking for movies that David Harbour was in, to see if we somehow got the movies mixed up. But no, this was the only movie like it that he had been in. So we figured that maybe the kid only played a small role, and the scene we remembered was near the end. So we went ahead and finished the movie, but there were never any kids, even similar looking, let alone that age. And David never had a pep talk scene like that. We even went back and looked at the trailer for the movie, but they were completely different than the trailer that we saw, and obviously fit the movie that we watched instead. We both agreed that we had never seen these new trailers, but could never find any trailer like the one that we saw back in July. The remote control for the TV in our bedroom went missing. Not that surprising, as we have a toddler who loves remotes and likes to hide things in random places. I figured it would turn up soon in his toy box, or the dog's bed, or in the dishwasher, as has happened once. Anyway, when it had been missing for about a week, I was pretty fed up. So after our son had gone to bed, my boyfriend and I decided to have a proper search for it. We turned that room, and subsequently the rest of the house, upside down. We had definitely both taken the duvet cover completely off the bed and shaken it at least once each. Plus, removed all of the pillows to look down the side of the mattress, etc. After a while, we both kind of simultaneously got exasperated and just stopped for a moment. Standing by the side of the bed, trying to think of where the hell the stupid thing might be. I was convinced that it must be in the baby's room, the only place we hadn't searched. Then I looked down, and it was in the bed, as in plainly in view, half under the duvet as though tucked in for the night. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up and a chill went down my spine. I knew there was no way that it had been there the whole time. We both separately completely stripped the bed and had shaken out the duvet. Our son was asleep, so there's no way that he put it there. My mind immediately jumped to the fact that my boyfriend may be pranking me, but when I looked at him and asked him, he looked just as shocked and white-faced as me. He swore that he did not put it there, and I believe him. He seemed just as freaked out as I was.